you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
I'm Chris Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, the airline sings that makes official. Welcome to the big show. As always, the Chris Voss Show is the family that loves you. For 16 years, going on 17 and 2,600 episodes, we bring in the Chris Voss Show. You know why? Because we care, darn it. We care about stuff. We care about making the world better, improving people's lives, improving people's mindset, and getting them to learn stuff. So share the love. The love. Go to Goodreads.com but make sure there's always consent. Go to Goodreads.com/Chris Voss. I had to squeeze that joke in there. LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss. Facebook.com/Chris Voss. YouTube.com/Chris Voss. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today's featured author comes to us from bookstolifemarketing.co.uk. With expert publishing to strategic marketing, they help authors reach their audience and maximize their book's success. Today, we have an amazing young man on the show. We're going to be talking about a couple of his books and some of his insights as well. We're going to be leading off with his first book entitled America's First Love, out September 16th, 2025. We're going to get into it with him. Dana Bahan joins us on the show. Welcome, Dana. How are you?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I am doing excellent. Give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
DanaWrites.com would be the website, maybe in about a week or so.
Okay. And give us a 30,000 overview of what's inside your book.
Too much.
You got to give me more of that, bud. We got a half an hour to go.
I talk about our founding fathers, about some of our first presidents. I also talk about cultural problems in America, problems with ideologies that I think are foreign to our country. And so I just kind of talk about a lot of different things, but I also talk about our president and how I believe about him. And I talk about the Gen Z generation, which is actually, they're doing some good things, especially through Charlie Kirk's influence at universities. So I got stuff to talk about that, and my complaint about political parties, excessive loyalty to parties is a problem because even George Washington recognized that back in the day. He didn't belong to a party, by the way.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to become a king. That's what he fought against, a monarchy system or divine rights of kings. And he thought that was a real problem.
It really was. It was for them. At the time. So, yeah, that's why they were saying, no, we're not doing this anymore, and we're starting a Declaration of Independence, all that good stuff. Let's lead off with some of the things in the book. You talk in the book about Christians protesting government intrusion in our lives.
It needs to be done peacefully, Chris. Okay. Obviously, we don't want to start a revolution like we did against England.
Yeah, that was not fun the first time. But
No. But we do need to let our voice be heard. A lot of times, you know, I've been a church-going person for quite a while after I found the Lord when I was in Vietnam. And I just challenged God one night. I said, if you're real, prove yourself to me. And amazingly, he led me to someone that showed me the right way to have peace with God, and that's through his son, Jesus Christ. So that's where my Christian life started. But what I was leaning to was churches are often disengaged when it comes to politics. They don't like the ugliness of it. Of course, it's just a natural thing to just shy away. And a lot of people are that way. You know, when they say, don't talk to me about God or religion or politics, anything else we can talk about. But the thing is that those are the most important things to talk about, because what we believe and what our ideas about, you know, how we should live our lives and how we should be influenced. You know, I'm a strong believer in the Christian foundation of this country. We never were a perfect nation, but we were a people that were looking for freedom. I think our Constitution did a pretty good job with that. If we want freedom, I think we need to look to God as our first source and for truth as well. And I did mention the Gen Z generation. I think they're really seeking truth, and they're kind of tired of all the lies and all the, oh boy, the lights just went out. But anyway, they were highly influenced by, our college kids are being highly influenced by public education. Some of their ideas about life could be centered around, Marxism, atheism, or whatever, but they never bring up what our founders believed. And I think we need to have more representation in our colleges about our history, about America, what made America great. And I just don't think there's, and that's why Charlie Kirk was so popular. And he got a lot of students to listen to him because he engaged them with hard questions. And they gave him hard questions, and he was respectful and kind to these people. You
saw him being respectful and kind to people?
I think so. I didn't hear everything that he said, but I think what he said was, got their attention.
Yeah.
Because they're seeking truth. They really are.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, in this last election, there was a lot of young people that were in college that never voted before, but ended up voting for Trump.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think Donald Trump recognized that. And,
yeah.
Anyway, I rambled on. Sorry.
No, you're fine, because this is your feature, and we want to talk about the things you think and the opinions you're offering. Mm-hmm. I didn't see, some of the xenophobia and racist comments that Charlie Kirk made, I'm not sure I'd agree that he said nice things all the time.
No, I think he challenged them. He might have said some things that really
he did say some things because they're on video, and I've seen them.
Yeah.
I don't
think, and they were engaged with him. That's for sure. And he said, "Bring me your toughest question."
And to be honest, if you've watched a lot of video on Charlie Kirk, much of his videos are edited. So he played the greatest hits of the ones that worked, but he failed a lot of the time. And I don't really have anything too much against Charlie Kirk.
Politicians need to go talk to these kids too. They're afraid to be confronted by the young people.
But and I want to make the point that in no way, shape, or form should the violence that begat Charlie Kirk ever
whether you agree with him
in
or
a society, whether you agree with him or not. Murder, violence is never the answer. And I think that's some of the stuff you talk about in your book, don't you?
About violence?
Yeah, and violence.
I think we got to be as peaceful as possibly. Yeah, we need to engage, and we need to be bold about what we believe, but we don't want to provoke people to anger. Now, it just comes naturally, depending on what side of your beliefs are.
Yeah,
I do believe that we need to have discussions with the young people and older people too.
Yeah.
And people that are Democrat or Republican, there's too much hate. And we all come from the same background, a lot of us. And I don't know, when I say background, I mean our history. We have a great history. It's not perfect by any means. But there was a nobleman, Alex de Tocqueville. I don't know if you ever heard of him. But he wanted to...
Tocqueville?
Yeah, he was a nobleman. Anyway, he went to America in the mid-1800s to investigate why they were prospering so much. He came to the conclusion that these people had a strong family unit, and they believed in Christian values. They were church-going people. They were influenced by probably a number of things, the Pilgrims, whatever. But there was a lot of different churches in our country. They didn't always agree. A lot of people had that strong faith background, and they taught it to their children. So anyway, I think, a person that came from another country to investigate why we were growing so much as a country and during that period of time, says something about our background.
Yeah, he wrote one book, The Old Regime and the Revolution, And
you probably know more about him than I do. So
yeah, the original one was Democracy in America.
Okay.
And this was in 1835. The book was published. Yeah. So it was a time capsule of that time period. I would give you, a family unit's really important, especially the government, for breeding and bringing taxpayers and people that can support the older generation. The system, we're seeing that failure of population right now. Yeah. I was just reading something yesterday about Ukraine's got a real population program because they've sent so many men to the war. They don't have a big population comparative to Russia either. But I mean, Russia's in the same crush. We are now. China, Japan. There's a lot of European countries that are going to disappear. I believe Germany's another one. There's a great book that's out there that details a lot of this stuff. And I think Japan's been in decline for a long time. So families are important. I think one of the
turn the lights on a minute. I don't know why they shut off. There we go. All I had to do was move.
Yeah. Right. It's on one of those timers. All right. So yeah, you talk about in the book, you lead off in the foreword, making abundantly clear that Christians protesting government intrusion in our lives, whether it be higher taxes or burdensome policies, must be done peacefully. Peace is really important. And doing things peacefully, of course, that's why we have a democracy, so people can have their different ideas, share them, and everything else. And you believe as a Christian that it's your responsibility to be subject to governing authorities, but also to your right as part of a government to question decisions made by the government that endanger constitutional.
That's where voting comes into play.
Okay. So that's.
And I know in our churches, we got maybe 35% that vote.
Mm-hmm.
That's wrong. That's wrong.
Yeah. I wish everyone would vote in America. Like when I hear that, I think, and I'm just pulling these numbers on the top of my head, but I think like about 35% of Americans across the board don't vote. It might be a little bit more, but it's just disgusting that people don't care about this democracy. We are each and all of us stewards of this democracy. Right. And it's up to us to make sure that every 4 years, this democracy moves forward. And, I've been a Democrat, I've been a Republican,
Me too.
I'm now independent. And this identity politics that we have is a real problem. Yeah. I mean, people see the reason, you mentioned earlier why people don't want to talk politics and religion is because it's an identity for most people. And, I've been probably the biggest critic of the people I voted for because I voted for them. When a president embarrassed me, and all presidents I've ever voted for, I've kind of been about 50-50 with, where like 50% that I like and 50% I don't. And I'm like, really unhappy with what you're doing here. I'm not one of those identity fans where, my quarterback is always right and the ref is always wrong. No, I'm the ref. And I've stopped voting and switched parties because of some of the embarrassments that I've had.
I come from a Democrat family, and two of the brothers, very strong Democrats. My folks were strong Democrats, but they were as conservative as a Democrat could be.
Oh, yeah.
But in today's world, you don't see that.
They really moved the stakes on the. Yeah. They moved the goalposts in both parties. Yeah.
But anyway, I used to challenge my mom, and she listened to media, and I didn't agree with it, and we'd get into little spats together. And Dad says, "No arguing about politics." I said, "Okay." Said, I won't do that. But I used to just, if it didn't make sense to me, it didn't make sense. Common sense out the door. I'm thinking. The media has gotten really crazy about, they're really not stating facts. In fact, I wanted to bring up something. I talked about the Gen Z. And somebody asked some of these young people, 13, 17 years of age, they're all guys. He just came up and asked them, and he said, "What is America's biggest problem?" And he said, or they said, the media not reporting the truth. That's very interesting that they have that kind of insight.
Now, who said that?
I just heard it on a conservative talk radio station, and some guy went up to some young kids and asked them about that. Yeah. And, I think that Gen Z are really searching for truth. And if they can see that the media is telling lies or not telling the truth or just giving you opinion news, then that says something about our media outlets. Huh. And anyway, that's just something I wanted to bring up.
Yeah. We're assuming that gentleman is true. We have a lot of great media authors and anchors and news channels, and I'm pretty familiar with them privately. They carry most professional media people carry around a copy of the Constitution. I don't know the Gen Z kids do. And
no, I'm not saying they're all
one thing I would just push back on that too is a lot of people that I find, because you and I are sitting here discussing people that don't vote, and a lot of people use that excuse for a lazy reason to not watch the news, to not learn about what's going on, to not stay educated. It's a default, I'm too fucking lazy to do it, so I don't care. And that's really what a lot of that, when you hear people say that, do. Because like I said, we're talking about how people won't vote. We're talking about how we're each stewards of our democracy. It is each of our responsibilities, because we share in this wonderful, it's not always wonderful. It's a like they say in what the Constitution, or where is it said? We're in search of a perfect union or something. We're striving towards a perfect union or something in the wording. I know I don't have the exact, so don't write me. But that's what we are. I mean, the Constitution was a living document designed to be amended and fixed and changed over time and to be, that sort of operating system. And each of us needs to do that. And I hear that from a lot of people, even older people, not just Gen Z. The news and this, you can't trust anything anymore. That's a give up sort of mentality. That's a give up mindset. Yeah. Where I'm not going to give it because I'm just too lazy to care. And, and I see so many people when we have these discussions about politics and different things, whether it's on the show, whether it's on my Facebook or any other social medias. And you'll talk to people and they'll be like, I just don't know. And I don't care. And I've got to go watch The Bachelorette, or I've got to go watch The Kardashians, or I got to go watch TV for 5 hours a day or do video gaming while I numb my brain. But I don't have enough time or resources to actually watch the news and find good news, curate good news. There's people that I meet that they'll tell me why they voted for a particular politician, and they'll tell me something, and I'll be like, we follow a lot of politics on the show. We talk about a lot of politics on the show. I've never heard of what you just told me. And let's take 5 seconds and go to Snopes.com and see if it's real. Turns out it's 100% of the time never real. And they could have taken 5 seconds and done that. And most people need to do that. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad Gen Z got involved. I mean, Charlie Kirk was funded by billionaires to create the Turning Point. And
really?
Yeah. Yeah. See, this is the challenge. People need to look this stuff up. They need to learn. They need to read. Who's trying to influence? Right now, we just had.
Depends what you read.
That's true, but you've got to find the truth. The truth is out there. There is 2 + 2 does equal 4, and it always equals 4. Mm-hmm. There is facts that are out there, but people have to go find them. And so one of the problems is there's so much this social media, so much this noise, so much of this disillusion, so much of distraction. There's also so much misinformation that's purposely put out to deceive people. And so it was great that Charlie Kirk and Turning Point, got so many people out and got the youth vote out. Whether or not it served them, I guess we'll have to find out. And
any kind of revival, it starts with the youth.
Yeah, and it gets them to vote.
As old codgers that are up in the 70s like me.
You're not.
It's not going to start with the middle-aged people.
Yeah.
It's got to start with the young people. And
they should care more. And young people just don't predominantly vote up until, I think, the latest election with, like we said, was Charlie Kirk's turning. So it was a good thing that they got out the vote and we get people interested in politics early. Because they should care. My first
president I voted for was Jimmy Carter. He was a Christian man, so I just kind of swallowed the Kool-Aid after that, and some of his policies were terrible. Yeah. So after that, I went more conservative and Republican after that. But, you live and learn. And when you trust people and you vote for people, that's one thing about Donald Trump. I voted for him twice. And this man is brash and a little overbearing at times and says things maybe he shouldn't say. But this man means what he says, and he keeps his promises. And in his first term, he did that, and then the second term, he's doing an amazing job with the team that's behind him. He's got a good team that he can trust now, and I think they're getting a lot done. I don't want to harp on that too much, but I I will respect any politician that keeps their word. And this man has certainly kept his word to my thinking. And, people complain about his tariffs. He's just trying to get fair tariffs, and he's getting that.
Do you think that's only what he's trying to do when he does tariffs?
No, I think he's, through the tariffs, and, he's manipulating people to have peace with each other, and all these wars that he's helped eliminate, 7, 8, 9, whatever he's claiming. He's still working on Ukraine and Russia, but
yeah,
that's a project still ongoing.
So let me ask you this. Let me play devil's advocate.
Sure. You're doing a good job of that. I can tell.
Yeah. I mean, on the show, we don't want to, we have a show where we want facts to rule and data to rule. And people are welcome to their opinions, but we also want to make sure that there's a stabilization of facts and reality. Yeah. And, we're not one of the shows that promotes conspiracies. And I'm not saying that's what you're pushing. I'm just saying we're just not that show. But he made several campaign promises that on day one, he was going to fix pretty much everything. A lot of things, pricing, Ukraine, Russia. How do you feel in making the statement that you feel he's making his promises when there are actually a lot of promises he promised to do, especially on the first day, that never came to fruition and aren't anywhere near at this point? Do you really?
Are you talking about this term or the first term?
I guess this term. Did you mean the first term when you said that?
I think he kept most of his promises in the first term. The second term, he secured the border.
Did he really?
Yeah, I believe he did.
Okay.
I think he stopped the cartels. At least he's trying to. Of course, he gets criticism for blowing up their boats. That's bringing fentanyl into our country and other harmful drugs that could kill millions of people.
Is it possible he could be up to something else in those boat killings?
Anything's possible. None of us are perfect.
It's not about perfect. It's about intent and agenda.
I think, I think you could nitpick on a lot of things about what he said and what he's going to do. But the important things, is securing the border is a big thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a really big thing. And the Biden administration didn't do anything. They said, come on in.
I think they did some stuff, but I don't remember Biden ever saying.
I don't know what.
And I'm an independent, so I'm not defending Biden. I was very critical of a lot of his stuff. In fact, I think the people that hid his health interests should be imprisoned or.
Yeah, I felt sorry for him, but obviously. He was just a puppet for other people making decisions for him.
That's usually how it works in this country. It seems like the billionaires are owning and everything. Now,
rich, the funny thing about politics these days, you got to be rich or you're not going to get there. I would prefer we didn't even have political parties and you just put a limit on the money and let people vote for whoever they want to.
There was a lot of our founders that wanted that.
But that'll never happen. The two parties will always stay in power. So we're stuck with two choices.
Yeah. And in your book, you talk about Benjamin Rush and George Washington. Tell us why you like those individuals and give us some more insight into some of the thoughts you had.
George Washington I believe was a Christian. He's been criticized as not being a Christian because of whatever. And they got documentation all over about, statements that he's made. David Barton's book, Constitutional Intent, is one of my resources, and I really trust him a lot. So I get a lot of my information that I put in my book from his book and from the Bible. Of course, I use a lot of scripture in my book because my words are not inspired. God's words is. So people can argue all they want with me, and I don't care. But when you argue with God, then you're climbing up the wrong tree. But that's just my opinion and my conviction. And, I respect people that may not believe those kind of things. And I can have a healthy and respectful conversation with anyone. I'm not going to bludgeon them with my morality all over the place. But Benjamin Rush, he just believed that we should vote for people of high moral character, whether they're Christian or not. Whether they keep their promises for the most part. We just need to vote for better people. And the churches need to get off their lazy butt and get out there and vote, not 30%, but get out there and vote 80%, 100%. Because it's wrong, it's sinful in my view, and we're being complicit with evil when we just don't vote. We get bad candidates that we consider to be evil things, and you got nobody to blame.
Yeah.
So Christians are surely to blame a lot.
Yeah.
And I point the finger at them.
You bring up a good point.
Myself, because, I've always voted, but I've never gotten involved with the public service or being a senator or a representative or anything like that. But I think a lot of Christians should do that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I was just pulling this up. 2 points. I was just pulling this up. It says here on Google search, George Washington was a Christian, specifically an Anglican who was raised in the faith. He regularly attended church and held church offices. Some people argue, I guess, whether he fully adhered to Orthodox Christian beliefs, but that's the debate, I guess. You bring up a good point. Like I said, we're all stewards of our democracy. We all need to think of it that way because we all share in it and we all enjoy the good parts of it, and we all suffer the bad when we make bad choices. But you bring up a good point that, I have so many people that will be like, oh, these politicians suck, or this politician sucks. Sometimes it's like we talked about before, it's an excuse just not to give but we need to vote, to me. And I usually tell those people bold-faced. I just go, you know what? You get the government you vote for. And if you don't vote, that still is a choice. So these people that are like, I'm not going to vote because, politicians suck or whatever their bullshit reason for being lazy is, they've made a choice. And so they've influenced the vote and voted whether they realize it or not. And they voted for a crappy government. And then I love when they're the ones who sit around and complain. And I'm like, did you vote?
Yeah.
I hate that. I'll ask people when they complain about stuff. I'll be, did you vote in the last election?
Correct. No.
And, oh, no, I didn't vote. Oh, you should probably just shut up.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm bringing this up. Maybe it's not what you want to hear, but I also talked about the influence of Marxism and communism in our government, in our society, really. It kind of creeped in the early 1900s, I suppose. But, one of the President Obama's comments and quotes was to fundamentally transform America. And I tried to interpret what he meant by that. And I do think, obviously, he was trying to set the seeds for a different kind of government. And so I took issue with that. And I, talked about it quite a bit throughout my book. So I just want to bring that up. I don't necessarily think that all socialists are communists. They're kind of brother and sister. Communism is probably more extreme than socialism. Different types of socialism has been attempted throughout the world. Most of them have turned out to be failures. There might be some good things about it. Even in the beginnings of our, when people sailed over to America in the first, I'm not a very good historian. I'm trying to think of Bradford and different, they tried socialism actually in the beginning. It didn't turn out very well. But, people should work. People should do what God gifted them to do, and to rely on government handouts, or I think is just the wrong message. And for big government, I think is the wrong message too, because our founders warned us about big government, monarchy type of systems.
It certainly did. And we built a big government.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Anyway,
that's one of the things about government.
I want to bring that up. I don't know if you want to hear that or not.
I mean, this is your thoughts we want you to share on the show, and what you've written in your books, and all that sort of good stuff. Let's talk about Dreams of Your Fathers. Now, that's your second book, or that's
my first one.
Okay.
Yeah, I did that book a long time ago, and I've been redoing it.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a very astute writer. I just do the best I can. But Dreams of Our Fathers was first, published in 2012 during, after Obama's term. But then I just kind of added on to it. And
it's like the Constitution just needs to, it's always a living document.
Correct. A living, breathing document. Yeah.
And you critique in it ideologies like socialism, Marxism, and different things. I don't remember the Fundamentally Transform America speech, but
he made that quote many, many times.
Did he? It was like one of his favorite things.
Fundamentally transform America. You can say what you will about the man. He was popular. He was, voted in twice. But, I compared his accomplishments with Trump's first term. It wasn't even close. I mean, But anyway, so I make a comparison there.
Yeah.
I also talked about
why do you think some of his policies weren't successful as much as Trump's? I'm questioning that, but I suppose we'd have to go look it up. Yeah, because one of the problems that Obama had was Republicans, mainly Mitch McConnell, claiming to be the Grim Reaper, and we're not going to approve anything Obama wants, and that's why Obama had to do as much as he could with.
I'm not sure who had the power of Congress back then, but
it was Mitch McConnell, and he basically stated, that is a quote you can Google and find, that he was not going to approve any legislation but by Obama, and it was just basically sabotage.
Yeah.
And this is kind of one of the problems we've been having, and one of the fallacies that the founders who wrote the original Constitution did not foresee was the House leader, majority leader, becoming basically a puppet for the president. They thought that Congress would operate independently. It would respect its rule and its duties that it was given on the Constitution, and it would stand firm aside from the president. And in recent years, in recent presidents, actually, and you can go back probably to Reagan or Nixon, the Congress has really operated as a right hand and basically a default carbon copy of the president. And that hasn't been good for our democracy, because and at least in my opinion, because there needs to be pushback. There needs, Congresses, we have 3 branches of government that are designed to disagree on purpose, and have the powers to do that. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
we got to have checks and balances. I know that. But,
yep. Checks and balances.
It's the parties are so divided now; they can't agree on anything. So,
and they kind of disagree on purpose.
They do, yeah.
And they do things to sabotage. They do things to, I think the American people are tired of all of it in Congress. Mm-hmm. But like we talked about earlier, we need to make better voting policies, right? Yeah. One thing you talk about in your book, Dreams from Our Fathers, you talk about America's duty to support Israel, in your opinion.
Yes, yes, sir.
Talk to us about that and why you feel that's important.
There are many promises in Scripture, maybe Genesis 12, 1, 2, or 3, I can't remember. God made a covenant with Abraham that, he would multiply his seed like the stars of heaven, and made a promise to them that they would have their own land eventually, because when they were separated and throughout the world and scattered through a bunch of countries, they were not obedient. And even after God delivered them out of Pharaoh's hand, they went in the desert, and they couldn't go into the promised land because they were disobedient. So he says, this generation will not see the promised land, but your descendants will. After Moses died, and the next man in line came, Joshua, took him into the promised land. And all the land was distributed through the 12 tribes of Israel. Mm-hmm. And now I'm a believer that in 1948, when Israel was established as a nation, I believe that was a prophecy fulfilled. And, there's many verses I could quote. Maybe I can't quote because I don't have the best memory in the world. But anyway, in 1948, I believe that was a fulfillment of prophecy that God would bring his people back to their homeland. Now, that's not what they have right now, is just a percentage of what God promised them. I mean, it's 10 times bigger than what it really is right now. But I think there's going to be an awakening for the Jewish people. But there's a verse I wanted to quote, that those who bless Israel will be blessed. Those who curse Israel will be cursed. Now, this is a blessing because God's people, this tiny nation, probably the smallest of all nations, I don't know for sure about that, but they're very small. But they're going to be a light to the world. But they come up with all kinds of amazing inventions. They're very intelligent people.
They have a great tech. They have a great tech Silicon Valley there in Israel. We have a lot of them on for that.
Yeah, but anyway, I don't want to confuse Christian people, because they say they reject the Messiah, Jesus.
Christian people do?
There's a lot of Messianic Jews in Israel right now, and I was influenced by their publications and magazines.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
You betcha.
Because you said something, people reject Jesus. Are you referring to Christians? Because you were talking about Christians. Are you talking about?
No, I'm talking about Judaism and the religion of Israel.
Okay. I just want to clarify
religion.
that for our listeners.
They reject that Jesus has actually come yet. But the Messianic Jews that believe in Jesus, they believe that he has come as a man and died as a man and rose again on the third day. But the thing is that there's a movement in Israel right now, and many people are opening their hearts to the Lord. And I do think the International Fellowship of Jewish and Christian People is a real important one, because Christians are starting to help the poor Jews and help them, with all the bombing problems. And, so there's been a bit of a repair of the breach, so to speak, between Christians and Jews. And I think we need to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We're commanded that. Jerusalem is mentioned 699 times in the Bible. So that's where the Lord is going to come back and set up his kingdom when he comes back. But anyway, between that, whenever that period happens, and nobody really knows for sure, but we're going through a lot of trouble in this world, and it may not be as far off as you think. But, I do believe this first act of bringing them into their country and establish them, with their own land, is a fulfillment of prophecy. And I do think many Jewish people will come around, have more of an openness to the Lord Jesus Christ.
So when you mean that, do you think will they stay Jews in Judaism? I mean, you're kind
they'll stay Jews. So. I mean, they're very distinct and very different. I mean, they,
they'll convert, I guess is my question, to Christianity.
I think they'll, they're still going to have the temple, and they're going to have, where they sacrifice lambs or whatever.
Do they still do that? I'm not even familiar with it.
I'm not sure.
I'm going to have to ask my Jewish friends what they're up to, I guess.
Maybe I should be careful what I say, because the Jewish people are very distinct, and I think God has made a special covenant with them. And it doesn't mean that they're better than we are. It's just that God chose them. The most unlikely, smallest nation in the world, to be a light for his law, the Ten Commandments. And so a lot of our Christian beliefs derives from that promised land, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
So it's like we're like brothers and sisters, that we should be praying for each other.
Yeah.
And we definitely need to be praying for them, because there is no other people group that's been persecuted to the degree that they have.
They have suffered a lot of persecution, that's for sure.
All you got to do is look at Nazi Germany. That's National Socialism for you. So that's what happened there.
Yeah, definitely. As we go out, any final thoughts and pitch out to people on picking up your book, or your books, I should say, and where they can find out more about you, .coms, et cetera, et cetera.
DanaWrites.com is the website, and it should be out in about a week or so. I have, I got a Facebook account, but, it isn't much. I'm a limited budget guy. I just, I try to do marketing to the best I can. And I don't know. It's a message that might challenge some people. And I think a challenge is good. You need to, and people need to challenge me as well. And, like you did today.
I mean, I'm not challenging you personally, but the ideas maybe, and making sure that we're on base. But, like we've had this great discussion here, Dana, between the two of us. I vent a little anger at people who don't vote. You can tell it's kind of a thing for me where I'm like, this is bullshit. These people don't vote. And I'm not saying you should, these people who don't vote for whoever, but no, I would think our democracy could be more dynamic if we can have an open discussion, talking about ideas.
Yeah,
we can try, and I think one of the things that people need to recognize that our identity is Americans and human beings. And I'm an atheist. You're a Christian. Yeah. And we have.
Are you an atheist in a foxhole?
What does that mean? I think I know.
And you're hiding.
You might say, if I'm in danger in a foxhole.
God, I don't believe. Wait a minute, maybe I do.
I've had plenty of near-death experiences. I don't think I'm going to switch anytime.
No, I respect your view.
I respect you too, Dana. And yeah, I mean, but that's a good question. But but we need to. I found that a lot of my political discussions, if I set them up and I go, okay, we're going to operate from a basis of fact here. we're all Americans. We're all in one big lifeboat.
Yeah.
And if someone starts punching holes in the lifeboat because they want to own the libs or they want to, whatever the alternative is on the other side, we're all going to sink together and drown.
Yeah. Let me say one thing before I go. I want to share a story. When I challenged God to prove himself to me, I was in Vietnam, and he led me to this guy who he discipled me and helped me to memorize scripture. He even took me to a black barracks that was, there was a lot of segregation back then. He says, God wants me to go into this black barracks and lead him to Christ. I said, I want you to go in there with me, and I want you to pray about that. And I said, oh boy, I don't want to do that. So I went in there and I prayed, and he actually led to somebody to the Lord right there. And so another story I wanted to share with you is that my grandfather wrote me a letter, and I shared with him my decision to accept Christ. And I told him about my Vietnam experience and what I was going through. And anyway, I never heard. It's about 3 weeks later, the Red Cross got a hold of me and said that he's in the hospital, not expected to live, and you can go home on emergency leave if you want to. He was a hard drinker. He worked on the railroad tracks all his life. He was a track foreman, tough old guy. He used to take me fishing all the time and curse all the time. Never went to church. His grandma always went to church, but he never did.
Yeah.
And anyway, I prayed for him, me and my Christian buddy, and he survived that hospital thing. And they had to open up his heart and massage his heart to get him back to life. And he lived to be 2 or 3 years later after that. And he started going to church. Mm-hmm. And I told my grandmother, I said, I shared with him about the Lord Jesus. I said, I don't know if he actually turned around and started believing or not, but he started going to a little Baptist church. And he went around to all his kids. And he was abusive at times when he drank so much. Mm. And he went around to all his kids. And in his way, he kind of apologized for the way he was. And he went and visited all his kids and planted trees. And, so I saw a miracle for an old man that was, in the high 60s. He didn't live very long because he drank so much. But he changed his life, and the Lord helped change his life. And to me, that was a miracle right there.
Yeah.
And anyway.
And it was kind of interesting. You were in Vietnam. We had a gentleman who was in Vietnam yesterday on the show, and he has a similar religious journey. He's a pastor.
Okay.
And he grew up in the era of Martin Luther King, and he was very angry at white people, and he had joined the Black Panthers back then. Right. If you remember in the 80s.
Yes.
And he had a lot of, he was really angry at white people, let's put it that way. I think he said, I would like to get rid of some. And he went to Vietnam, and he started discovering stuff. I thought all white people were rich, and, there's people in Vietnam fighting with me that grew up in poor backgrounds.
Oh, yeah.
And he was lucky enough to have someone, like you mentioned, you found a guy who helped you in Vietnam. He found someone who was super kind to him, who was white and super nice, and actually took him to his white church. And he was really surprised when he went, because, the black church community, the white church communities stayed fairly separated. Even Martin Luther King talked about it from, I think, the letter from Birmingham jail, where we can't even get along on Sundays over prayer. And so it's kind of interesting. And that changed his life. It changed his outlook on people. And, we talked about just understanding each other and talking, and it's such a big deal. But for me, a lot of my discussions is we're all Americans first. So F this party stuff, F this identity stuff. Mm-hmm. I vote for the person who will take this democracy forward safely for 4 more years. They may not be the best person that I would choose. When you got steak or chicken, you can only choose steak or chicken. So you have to go, who's the best person who can carry this baton of our democracy for the last 250 years forward another 4, and who will honor it, who will honor our rights, who will protect us, et cetera, and represent all of us as Americans.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what we need, regardless of our beliefs or whatever, because we're a giant melting pot of people and opinions. And
we need to pray for peace. There's, the peace is mentioned in the Bible a lot too. Peace, not as the world gives us, but as the Lord gives to each one of us. If we put our trust in Him, I think the Lord will give us peace and understanding. And Christians are far from perfect. Sometimes they're not obedient. And, I have a lot of people say, I know a Christian that did this, that, and the other thing. I said, well, it's because they're imperfect, and they're flawed just like everybody else, but hopefully not as blatantly as everybody else that may not have a belief system. Now there's people that don't have a belief system that might be more moral and upright than a Christian is. And, so there's people all over the spectrum.
Yeah. But I'm an atheist, and I go, what would Jesus do?
You're a pretty good person, right? You got your own.
I even asked myself, what would Jesus do? I've read the Bible. I'm familiar with it.
You sound like my brother.
Yeah. And, I believe, a lot of these tomes have great, that have lasted through the ages, the Quran, the Bible, and, some of the other ones that I can't think of off the top of my head right now. But a lot of them had good advice for how to be good human beings to each other.
The slippery slope here is that I believe there's an evil one out there that likes to deceive people, and he speaks a lot of truth, but he speaks a lot of half truths too. So you got to be clever enough and wise enough, I would say, to understand that the Bible makes it kind of pretty clear that we're all sinful. For all of sin comes short of the glory of God. There are some people that are better than others. There's no doubt about that. But you're not going to earn anything in heaven or actually go to heaven because of your good works. Now, some people have a problem with that, and they say they get prideful and they get stubborn. They say, wait a minute. God, you mean God doesn't want good people to go to heaven? Obviously, he does. All he wants from you, I believe, is your humility and just say, yeah, Lord, I'm flawed. I have sin problem. I ask your forgiveness to come into my life, change me. And he will come into your life and change you. That's a guarantee from Scripture. But as many as received him, to them he gave the power to become the sons of God. I think that, if we're open to that message, God will come to you. And he knows all about you anyway. But all you have to do is admit to him that, yeah, I need help. But, the problem is that a lot of good people have a problem with pride. They think I'm good enough, Lord. You're not going to send me to hell because, no, hell was not designed for good people. It was designed for the devil and his fallen angels. But if you want to follow the devil and, their propaganda, well, I'm sorry, you're going to go with them.
I think the Bible said, pride cometh before the fall. Is that correct?
Anyway, sorry I preached at you there.
No, you're not preaching. This is you sharing your ideas, and that's why we have you on the show, is to be a guest and share your ideas, and we get to talk about them. And there's lots of people in our audience that this is in their wheelhouse and what they appreciate, and we should have, like you and I have talked about, we should have this discussion of ideas. And
I've seen discussion.
discussion. And then if we can get my anger of, more people need to vote. I think I beat the drum pretty hard on the show about that whole thing. Yeah. It just makes me angry because they want to, when people complain about something and they're the cause of it.
Yeah. Point the finger at yourself.
Point the finger at yourself and take some self-accountability. If you choose not to vote, you're trying to get out the Christian vote for who aren't voting. If you choose not to vote, you made a choice. Right. And by not voting, by not engaging in a democracy and being an individual who is a steward of it, you're hurting our democracy and our freedoms and our rights, and you're making the situation worse by not voting. At least people who vote, we would know what everyone thinks. This is your country too.
For our kids, because they're our next generation, they're our representatives when we're gone. And if we don't help them now, where are they going to get their help? They're going to, they're going to fall in line with whatever totalitarian government we're under. And to me, we don't want that. We want to have a voice in our government. We want to have freedom. We want to have the right to believe or not believe. Yeah. Nothing should be forced on us. And it doesn't matter what kind of statism or what kind of government it is. No, thank you. Let me choose. Give me the right to choose.
And violence should never be the answer. What happened to Charlie Kirk was disgusting, horrific. Yes, I probably can't add enough adjectives to that, so I want to make that very clear. Violence is never the answer to my audience so that they know.
When you look at all the Christians being killed in Nigeria, there's a spiritual thing going on here. It's demonic as well. I mean, when they're beheading Christians over there, up to 500,000 people.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't know if that number is accurate. You can check it out. But, if our government can do something to stop the violence and, Muslim on Christians, and usually it's not Christians on Muslims, it's usually the other way around. And sadly to say that, I hate to get into the Muslim thing, but, whenever they go into, they don't want to assimilate, they want to conquer. That their whole thing is dominance. And, I respect the good Muslims that don't take their teaching quite as literally as some do.
Yeah.
Their religion is very troubling. And I don't know. To me, it's like the government. It's like a state religion, and any kind of state religion, even during the Crusades, was wrong. Christian statism was wrong, and in America we didn't adopt that kind of Christianity.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Dana. It's been wonderful to talk to you, and great discussion as well. I think hopefully we've maybe motivated some people to get out and vote.
Yeah. Darn it.
Turn it, vote. And also, please, everyone,
go midterms too.
Yeah, go to Snopes, double check everything that you put out. Always research, always double check.
Are you getting me in trouble now?
I'm not talking about you, but people, you've researched and wrote your book, but people, I'm so 100% of the time when I meet someone and they tell me why they voted for somebody, I'm like, I follow politics and I never heard that one. And sure enough, I'll Snopes it in 5 seconds, and it's completely 100% of the time made up. It's some sort of false flag or some sort of, red herring, or,
Who do you trust? That's a hard one too.
You can trust Snopes.com. I think they do some pretty good research. Okay. And,
I remember that. Thank you.
The other thing I do, and I'm suggesting this to the audience, the other thing I do is I pull from different sources. So I'm like, okay, so CNN's reporting this. Full disclosure, we've had a lot of CNN people on the show. We've had people, journalists from all walks of all the different top brands. But so even with CNN, it's hard to say who's not compromised at this point, because many of them have been compromised by billionaires. I'll double check. So I'll go see what everyone else is reporting. I'll go check the facts. I'll go try and find data. And I try and make sure I get as close to the truth as I can. There is objective truth in the world, but it's harder to find with all this noise, these podcasts that make disinformation that actually are paid by some of the political parties.
I remember going to college when I was going for my master's degree in physical education when I went to school. And there was one teacher there, professor, I don't know. He says there is no objective truth.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of slice that nut if you want to. I mean, you can say like science is always developing and stuff, but to me, 2 + 2 still equals 4, and at least it may not equal 4. That's objective truth. Right. We do find out eventually, usually what presidents are up to or what people have been up to, usually with whistleblowers or people that are telling us. And that's why it's so important for the fourth estate, the press, to have freedom and, of course, to report the truth. And it's up to us to support them as well.
Jesus said, I'll leave you with this one. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I hope that reaches somebody. I hope that reaches you, Chris.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Dana.
God bless you.
I'm glad somebody's looking out for me in this world.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to pray for you right away.
I probably need as much help as I can get, Dana. I think we're all in the same boat.
We are. I'm a sinner.
We're infallible by our nature.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dana, for coming on the show. Thanks, audience, for tuning in. Order up his book wherever fine books are sold. America's First Love, out September 16th. 2025. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the most amazing, intelligent podcast ever made to improve your brain and your life. Warning, consuming too much of the Chris Voss Show podcast can lead to people thinking you're smarter, younger, and irresistible sexy. Consume in regularly moderated amounts. Consult a doctor for any resulting brain bleed.
Go, Dana.